Hello. In the previous video I introduced decision trees and how they work. Now in this video I want to talk about I want to visualize the feature space when we take the different decisions, and also talk about two important questions that of course they are important because without them we can't form a decision tree in practice, right? So now let's start by creating a boundary that is associated with this decision tree here. Well, of course, before forming a feature space, we have to see what is the number of the features I have. Well, I have two features. The first is color, because I'm asking here a question about whether the sample is yellow, and the second feature is the length. So I will have a feature space that is formed of two dimensions. So this is the first dimension, this is the second dimension. This is color, and this is the length in centimeters. And of course I have only two possibilities of color, which is either yellow or non-yellow. So I would have here two bins, right? So this would be associated with yellow. This is yellow from here to here. And this bin here would be associated with non-yellow color, non-yellow, right? This is non-yellow, and this is yellow, and this is the length in centimeters. Now, the first thing that I do, remember, in this decision tree, I first ask a question about yellow, right? And then, based on that, I ask another question. If the answer is yes, I ask the question about the length, whether the length is higher than 10 centimeters, right? Now, if the answer is not yellow, everything that is not yellow is classified as strawberry, right? So everything that is here and non-yellow is classified as strawberry. Therefore, the first boundary that is formed by the decision tree is this. And everything here in this subset of data samples is a strawberry, right? And everything here may be either a banana or a lemon. Now, I think that I should draw some samples to make this visualization clear. So let's say that my samples are here, are distributed in this way. So these are my data points, right? So now everything that is on the right, everything that is non-yellow, so this is strawberry. This is a strawberry. Okay. Now, if the color is yellow, then I have to ask another question about the length. Okay. I ask a question about whether the length is higher than 10 centimeters. So let's say that 10 centimeters is here. What I do then is that I should divide this subset into two subsets, right? Because these are already classified. So I don't care about this subset here. This is already classified and I know the class of these data points. So I don't care about these, I care only about this subset. Therefore, when I divide this subset, when I divide with a line, I divide only this subset that I have here. Okay, so I ask a question about whether the length is higher than 10, and this forms another boundary in this subset here. So, everything that is higher than 10 centimeters is a banana according to this decision tree, remember. So everything that is higher than 10 centimeters is a banana, otherwise it's a lemon. So this means that all the samples that are here are bananas, and all the samples that are below this boundary are lemons. So this is my final boundary. This is the decision tree's boundary that is formed to separate my samples or data points. Now, in order to introduce you to these two important questions, let me give you another example of visualization of the decision tree, right? And let's keep, I will use only numerical features. So here I used both numerical features and categorical features, which is the color. Now I am going to use only numerical features. So let's say that I have two features, F1 and F2, that are numerical, right? And based on their values, I need to decide whether a data point belongs to the class 1 or class 2. Now let me form a decision tree. So let's say, for example, that the first question is F1 higher than 10. Well, if the answer is yes, then I would say, well, this is the class 1. Otherwise, if the answer is no, I would ask another question, and I would say, well, if F1 is not higher than 10, then it must mean that F1 is lower than 10, right? Therefore, I have the right to ask another question. For example, I can say, is F1 smaller than 5? Well, if F1 is smaller than 5, I can say, for example, this is the class 2. Otherwise, I ask another question. I say, well, is F2 higher than or equal than, let's say, 5? If the answer is yes, so this is yes, this is no. If the answer is yes, I say, well, this is class 1. If the answer is no, I say this is class 2. Now this is a decision tree whose depth is equal to 4, right? Because the maximum number of nodes along a given path is 4. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Now I want to visualize the feature space that is, or the boundary in the feature space that is formed by this decision tree. So this is my feature space. This is F1, this is F2, and I have here a bunch of data points that I want to classify, and I'm just, putting them here in a random way. Well, this does not matter. Well, the first question is, I ask if F1 is higher than 10, right? So let's say that 10 is here. This is 10. Now, everything that is higher than 10 should be class 1, right? So this is class 1, and this subset here is taken out of the way. Now, I will focus only on this subset here. So I take the samples in this subset and I ask another question about F1. I ask if F1 is smaller than 5. So let's say that this is 5. Then, all the samples that are smaller than 5 belongs to the class 2. So what I do is that I divide this subset again using a horizontal line, and this time this would be class 2. Now, otherwise, if the answer is no, that is, all the samples are either between higher than 5 or smaller than 10, then what I do is I ask a question about F2. So the question is F2 higher than 5? So let's say that this is 10 and this is 5. Now if the answer is yes, then what I have to do is that I take these samples, the set that is here, and everything that is on the left is considered as the class number 1, right? So I divide only these samples that are here, because obviously all of these samples here already belong to the class 2, and the samples that are here belong to the class 1. Therefore, I consider only the samples that are not yet classified. This is the reason why I divide only this subspace here. So everything that is higher than 5 is considered to be class 2. This is class 2. And everything that is smaller than everything that is higher than 5 is considered to be class 1, right? This is class 1. And everything that is smaller than 5 is considered to be class 2. Class 2, right? So this is the visualization of my feature space. And these, of course, are the boundaries that are formed by the decision tree. Now I will talk about the two important questions that are necessary to form a decision tree. Now here I asked a question about whether the f1 is higher than 10, and then I asked a question of whether the f1 is smaller than 5, and so on. Now, why I did exactly ask a question about this specific value, why I'm asking about 10, why I don't ask, for example, about 8 or 5 or 7 or any other value. And the same thing is, the same logic of course applies to these two other nodes. Okay, so how do I choose the value of the feature that for which I ask a question? Okay, so this is the first important question that we need to answer in order to form a decision tree. The other important question is, what is the order of the nodes, or what is the order of the question? So here I started with this node. Why didn't I started with started with this question, with this node, or with this node, right? So this is important to know in order to form a decision tree. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do anything in practice. And the answer to these two questions would be the topic of the next video, where we'll talk about the card algorithm.